discuss some points by some scholars, say Plato or Iliad, Barth, and then later on I have a story with you, and that story is of my favorite character. I would say hero, but my favorite character in that is Pinochet, and so I am sharing that story with you. It is a text, and the story occurs in the Aitareya Brahmana of the Rigveda. I hope that these words are not alien to you, since I had my introductory lectures. So we will be reading through that story, and when we read, what are the different layers? So to understand this particular story, to understand the hero, the main character who is there, what is the story trying to tell us? What has the story told earlier? Can we interpret this story in a totally different manner? So that is the possibility. So in the beginning, I may discuss Plato or I may discuss Iliad. We will discuss that in short. And we will give lot of importance to this particular exercise. So it can be a textual reading kind of a thing. You have the text which is in Sanskrit and the English translation. I have ensured that the English translation is circulated. So you have the text and immediately you have the English translation. You can follow the English translation when we start taking up the topic. Okay? So you can share if the papers are not sufficient, you can one paper between two students. So as such, when we begin with the topic, we just try to find out as to what will be the scope of our discussion. So when we speak about dimension, first of all, dimension becomes a term which is used in mathematics, becomes a term which is used in physics, and also in science fiction, where we have the two-dimensional reality. In philosophy, you can think of the three-dimensional reality or the fourth dimension. And I would say that when it comes to language, when it comes to story, the dimensions are endless. So therefore we think about dimension and therefore we use the word multi-dimensions. It's not specific two dimensions or three dimensions. When I was concentrating on this particular term, something Indian came into my mind as usual, and that is, see, we speak about the three realms of being. The first realm is the abhidha, which is the direct sense. So when I would say that the word, you say Ram, what will the word directly convey? Or when we say Ganeshaya Namaha, what will the word directly convey? So that becomes the direct connotation, direct meaning. Then you have something known as the Lakshana. Maybe I am trying to, when I say Ram, that Ram may indicate Gandhiji's Hey Ram also. Okay? That Ram may indicate calling a particular person Ram. It has got different meanings. Then, beyond that, when I go to the suggested sense, the word Ram, I may think that I am deriving some kind of peace, some kind of joy, some kind of happiness to it. I might be speaking of some kind of story which is related to Ram. I might be speaking about Ram in multiple contexts. So, as such, we have the three meanings existing in this mundane physical world. When we think of going beyond that, there is the world of silence. There, the meaning, which is purely experiential by each and every one of us individually, that experience may be same or may be different. So that is the fourth dimension. So that's why I thought of the word multi-dimensions. And so you have the last meaning, which is exhibiting many diverse characteristics. So when we have something in front of us, we try to understand reality in our own way. So in what way can we unveil reality, and in what way our teachers, our philosophers, our ancestors have taught us, that is something which we will be thinking. When I was just browsing through the internet, I came across this particular line, which I liked very much. And so I picked it up, I'm telling you honestly. So this is not something which is original. So, and so when it is said that what is exactly a myth? It's there in something called The Nature of Myth. Research that this particular line comes in front of us. It is said that it is a collective secret which does not go away, and it hangs there in the emotional atmosphere. And I felt this to be so true, especially when I was reading the Mahabharata, that the montage of Mahabharata was narrated by B.R. Chopra somewhere in the 90s. But still, it became something very fascinating for a producer, even in 2010. So the story is there, and in those 20 years actually, the society changed a lot. You can say that more and more people became alienated towards the concept of Indianness, but still it was not lost. It was somewhere within the minds of people. And therefore, when we got the reviews of the Mahabharata, at that time people could say that we don't know what story you are trying to tell us, but we are able to connect us with the story. So it hangs there in the emotional atmosphere, was something which I felt is quite true. And therefore, mythology comes in some or the other form. Earlier, it came in the form of narrators who wrote texts, not those, but it came in the form of kirtankas, it came in the form of bhagavats, who were the storytellers, and they came from the typical classical tradition. It came in the form of folk songs, it came in the form of pictures, it came in the form of iconography, cave paintings, where again the cave also has got its own story to tell. Whatever it is, so the story of the cave and the story of the contents which are there in the cave. So the story is still there. And in the 20th and in the 21st century, it came in the form of media. It came in the form of politics also. If you remember, some of you maybe in your early childhood, 1990s onwards, how politics also got affected with mythology. In the age of media, it came in the form of games. So when we were doing some project with the SR group, we were saying that Mahabharata fascinates us because many of our consultants, they have something called the Kurukshetra games. I didn't see that as such, but the Kurukshetra games. In movies, it came in the form of Hanuman. And that Hanuman had a different story to tell in the return of Hanuman. And so Hanuman, the first version, may be close to the Ramayana, may be close to the Tulsi Ramayana also as such. But the return of Hanuman, if some of you might have seen that, had its old story that how Hanuman took an avatar of a boy and Hanuman fought the Rakshasas in the form of pollution. So that is a very different meaning which was given by the director, by the producer, by the writers of that particular movie. So in some or the other form, the mythology continues and mythology lives and mythology exists throughout. And therefore, how did this begin with? So when I was thinking about how could have mythology begun? That is a question which normally we ask in the class, and there are a number of stories, there are a number of explanations, etc. I remember the words of Shankaracharya, and those words are like in the famous Bhaja Govindam, if some of you might know, it is Kastvam Koham Kutaha Ayataha. So who are you? Who am I? From where have you come up? From where have you emerged? Kame Janani Kome Tataha. Who is my mother? Who is my father? And thus in this way, the human being starts his questions. And these questions give rise to mythology at a certain level. These questions give rise to philosophy on another level. Okay? So therefore, we would say that, and so when we get educated about our mythology, first and the foremost thing is that you know your roots. In this global village, when everything is becoming homogeneous, when you get similar kurtis in all stores, when you get the same burger having the same number of sesame seeds across the world, what makes me feel different? My roots make me feel different. They make me feel that I am different, I can stand out amongst the many. And mythology helps us to understand our roots. Mythology helps us to understand the DNA and also to understand why do we behave in a particular fashion. For example, last year when we had Devdat's session, he had spoken about the way Indians eat and the way the food is eaten in the West is different. And that actually is reflected in the management skills which are there in India and in the management skills which are there in the West. That is, I'm not a management expert, so I cannot comment more upon that. But still, those who come from that background may understand the point which he had made. Yeah. So, you think about different cultures, the East and the West. East and the Indian to be, West and the Indian to be specific. See, in one of the Platonic explanations, he said that myths are used as philosophical explanations. And so I thought about this and I said, he's right in a way. So, when you have Shiva in the form of Ardhanarishwara, you may give a sociological explanation, or may give some kind of a different explanation, anthropological explanation, how the male principle and the female principle, they come together, and that is for the sake of fertility, and then the creation starts, etc. But at the same time, this concept becomes fixed in our mind when we understand the philosophy of Sankhya, where you have the Prakriti and the Purush, and where you have Prakriti and the Purush coming together. So this Ardhanarishwar concept can be understood, may have been put forth actually to imbibe certain philosophical principles which are there. Similarly, when you speak about the creation myth which is there in the Rigveda, that you have done the creation myth, so you have the Nasadiya Sukta, you have the Purusha Sukta. This can be understood when you read the Upanishads. So when it is said that moon emerged from Chandrama Manaso Jataha, so moon came out from the mind, the sun came out from the eyes. So this you can understand when you read the Upanishads, where the Upanishads speak about the creation which takes place, where the eternal reality was single, and that eternal reality thought of becoming many, and the process in which that reality became many. So you can say that, yeah, it's very much true that for philosophical explanations, mythology will be of lot of use to it.